Greetings, everyone. I am Syed Alizia Jaffrey, and I welcome you to another episode of the CISPR webinar series, which aims to bring to you policy discussions on a bevy of security, foreign policy, and strategic issues. In her latest book, Under the Nuclear Shadow, China's Information Age Weapons in International Security, scholar Fiona Cunningham masterfully explains how China has used non nuclear options to obviate its leverage deficit vis-à-vis its adversaries. Counter-space weapons are one of them, especially because of the escalatory risks they create. China, however, is not the only actor in space. If anything, it has become competitive, complex, and congested owing to the activities of other space-faring countries such as the United States, Russia, and India. Given how important the space domain is for both military and civilian purposes, scholarship centered on it will become more paramount, not least in terms of weaponization, militarization, and arms racing. Dr. Ahmad Khan has recently enriched the discourse on all of this in his co authored book entitled Saber Rattling in Space, A South Asian Perspective. At a time when emerging and disruptive technologies are changing how battles are fought and crises escalate, understanding the contours of space is both timely and essential. Today, we are fortunate to be joined by Dr. Khan himself. Uh, some words about Dr. Ahmed Khan. He's completed a PhD in Strategic and Nuclear Studies at the Department of Strategic Studies, National Defense University, Islamabad. He has co authored several international publications and impact factor journals on space and nuclear studies, including two book chapters in the Handbook of Space Security, published by Springer. He's a visiting faculty member in his in the same department, the Department of Strategic Studies at the National Defense University. Previously, he was also a visiting fellow at the South Asia Center Atlantic Council. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan, for joining us on the podcast. Um, it has always been a pleasure to interact with you and to learn about this all important space domain and your work, including this book, has always enriched our understandings of these issues. Um, so, at the outset, I would like for you to tell our audiences as to what this book is, why did you write this book, and what are the main themes of the book, and then we'll go into a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. I'm really happy to discuss some of my work with you, and hopefully the audience will definitely would like to listen to some of my work. First of all, the idea of the book actually came from during my fellowship at the Atlantic Council. Once I completed my PhD dissertation, I was looking forward to get it published. And the book is actually the culmination of the work I have done during my PhD studies. And the title of the book actually proposed by one of my mentor, Mr. Khalid Banori. And I was really happy at that moment when he proposed that very eye-catching title of the book. Actually, the main idea of the book is to know why states are acquiring capabilities in space to weaponize as well as militarize this final frontier. The central idea is that state has followed a path from militarization to weaponization. That is the main central theme of the book. Actually, the militarization began when the Sputnik launch was done in 1957. It was the event marked the beginning of the space militarization. But there is a fine difference between space militarization and weaponization, and there is a lot of things need to understand to distinguish these two ideas as well as these two processes and concepts. There is a need to understand it. And many people mix this militarization as well as space weaponization. Even perhaps during my course of understanding or my course of research on this topic, I also get equally confused as an early beginner on these two topics, because there is a very fine lines between these two understandings. Militarization is something else and weaponization is something else, but actually the people tend to interexchange these two ideas, but the book is actually based on these two fine concepts. One is what is militarization and one is what is weaponization. And I have studied in this book that the states have actually followed a path from militarization to weaponization. If we go into details, but due to this limited interaction, I will remain to some of the basic ideas. So can the other also equally understand. Militarization is actually the passive defense, or the what we can say that passive use of space satellites, whereas weaponization is actually the employment of these space weapons from space as well as from Earth as well as from space to space. So what I can clearly suggest the readers to get from my book is that once you go into some of the chapters of the book, you will clearly understand the difference between these two concepts. So actually, during my course of understanding, these two ideas continue to pinch me. What is the militarization and weaponization? That actually helped me to get into further research. But and I can clearly suggest many people that once you go into details, you will find many disagreements. There are disagreement, and my chapter number 5 has actually highlighted some of the differences on what is weaponization and what is militarization, because that actually encouraged me to pursue even a book on that. These fine lines, these foundation lines give me some of the ideas to get into research these two concepts and make it a public presentation in the form of a book.
Thank you so much for this succinct review of your book. I want to throw in the gauntlet. So, what a faring or any other nation does has has also got a lot to do with how that very action is perceived. So, given the advent of uh, emerging technologies, do you think that the line between militarization and weaponization, or passive defense and active defense or offense, is blurring?
Actually, space, what I can say is that uh, I have actually completed that book 3 4 years ago, but the process took a lot of time. And I can say that in that period of time, the concept of emerging technology has rapidly emerged. Unfortunately, you can say that this is my limitation or the limitation of the book, that some of the key aspects of the emerging technology wasn't able to be dovetailed in this book. Otherwise, I can say that, and many of the readings which are not in present in the book, but they may be present in other form of the books or other books, that emerging technology is now changing the course of the warfare or changing the course of the international or geopolitics, even at the regional level and the global level. And it is quite visible. And space is not left behind in this race. Space is also part of the emerging technologies. As you can see that there is a term 5G and 6G, mega constellations, low Earth orbit. These are some of the keywords. Once you enter into these keywords and try to research on the Google, you will find out a lot more role of space in the emerging technologies. I can repeat your question, but once I get what I get from that question is that space is equally contributing in the domain of ETs, which is emerging technologies, and these emerging technologies actually will be benefited from the space as well, because without space in this emerging world, in this transforming world, you can't live without space, especially the communication and navigation services provided by some of the mega constellations in geostationary orbit. Now this transformation is taking place in low Earth orbit. You can't live without this transformation. And my emphasis, if I'm unable to put it in my book, but you can find it elsewhere, that low Earth orbit is rapidly transforming, and you will see that in coming year, the low Earth orbit will eat geostationary orbit. Lot of geostationary orbit offering navigation and communication services. Now it will be transformed into low Earth orbit. Many mega constellation developed by China, US, and other countries will actually help to give these services from the low Earth orbit. So my understanding is that space is also part of the emerging technologies, and these blurring lines are there, but space is actually equally offering the peaceful uses of peaceful side of the technologies as well as emerging technologies. So we have to find a balance between the peaceful uses as well as the military uses. But as far as the as far as the realist perspective is concerned, the states are tend to balance the power and shift the balance of power in their favor, but because of these technologies. It is the technologies that is driving the world, and we should equally understand their role.
Thank you. I think you've put a lot on the table, and I'll come to some of those points at the end. I agree. I think the space domain is also grappling with the dual use problem, and obviously, as you rightly point out in the initial chapters of your book, the space domain is equally critical for civilian and military purposes, and herein lies a lot of responsibility on spacefaring nations as to how they conduct themselves in the space. Um, so we've always, uh, toyed with this idea of a trilemma when we talk about strategic stability in South Asia, uh, especially. But you have also introduced the concept of a trilemma in the space domain. Um, and I think it would be useful if you could delve into that further for the benefit of our audiences. How do you see the trilemma, the security trilemma in the space domain?
Thank you very much for asking this question. This is a troubling question. First of all, I would remind to those people who are not in favor of tagging these terminologies in South Asia, but I would suggest to them, many of them, that this is our reality we are facing now. My book clearly and my research clearly indicates that there is a security trilemma, space security trilemma between China, India, and Pakistan. In Pakistan and China are good friends, and they are having a relation of amity, whereas Pakistan and India are having a relationship of enmity. And same goes for China and India, they are having an enmity relation. This relationship is particularly witnessed in space as well. And many people would tend to disagree because of the geographical connectivity we have. But this is a reality that whatever China do, whatever China does in space, it is because of the American influence. And this is being seen, and whatever China want to take a countermeasure against the American development in space, it is taken as an offensive measure by by India. And whatever India do, it is taken as an offensive measure by Pakistan. So it is a vicious cycle, and nobody is taking out of this equation. And we cannot discount that this particular relation has been witnessed in India, Pakistan, and China and America as a fourth nation influencing this region. China's anti-satellite test was considered as a threat to the Indian space object, and many of the Indian scholars, as well as Indian Air Force, as well as in ISRO and DRDO chief, they all the chiefs or in of DRDO, ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, and Indian Air Force, they stated against this particular development, and they took it as an offense against the Indian development, Indian space objects. And India in 2019 tested the anti-satellite missile just to respond China. And can we not able to respond to that? We have responded, and it is visible on MOFA's website. You can visit, and the response was there. So whether it is a
Although
threat or
the Indians took about 12 years to respond to China. China tested in 2007, if I'm not wrong.
actually, this is another side of the story, and I would suggest you to read my book, especially the capability part on India, and you will
Uh,
find the answer
yes.
that they were not politically ready to test this capability, even though India developed MIRV capability before 2022. When it was tested in 2024, it was developed, I think, a decade ago, but they kept it secret and did not test until they find it suitable to test and validate their capability. Anti-satellite missiles were developed way back in 2020. Even I would say, my understanding is that 7 to 8 years earlier they have developed anti-satellite, but they were not politically ready. And once I wasn't able to put that statement in my book, but it is there that Prime Minister Modi announced that announced after the test that India is now a fourth space power. That was Buddhism in space. And no, finally, my final word to the space security trilemma is that I would suggest this is not my part of this is not still part of the book, because the event has happened later on in 2025 May. But the role of space power can be better understand in the context of Pahalgam incident and onward, and you can make a framework from that from the chapter which I have written on the space security dilemma, and build some of the evidence. You can collect some of the evidences basis based on that particular framework, the space security dilemma, and you will see that there is a reality in that framework which has been witnessed during the May 2025 incident, or what we can call it, a conflict, come little a war.
I'm happy that you brought the May 2025 crisis, brought up the crisis here. I think these are still early days, and scholars like yourself can would probably be doing a lot of research on how space and obviously by extension ISR capabilities helped uh, Pakistani forces at the tactical level to respond to India's ec- um, blatant and illegal acts of aggression. And I think there's a lot of scope for further research. And as the more the time passes, the more information we'll have. So India, as you know, is our arch rival, and we are in this security dilemma. as well with that country. Um, Last year, when John Feiner in made a statement about Pakistan's so-called ICBM threat, uh, the alarm bells were rung in Washington D.C. and here in Pakistan, and what transpired after that was a series of a series of sanctions on some Pakistani companies that were providing materials for ballistic missiles. Uh, but we know for a fact that there is a symbiotic relationship between ballistic missiles and space programs, and the entire edifice that the US policymakers and academics created was based on Pakistan trying to develop large diameter rocket motors. So I want to take this opportunity to ask you what is what is this relationship between space launch vehicles and ballistic missiles, and also given that we are talking about India, India did the opposite. So major powers like the US um, adapted ballistic missiles into space launch vehicles, but India did the opposite. So please shine light on all this, and because I think it's really important for academicians and also policymakers in today's environment.
Thank you. Thank you for asking this particular question. John Foyner's statement, I find it a very awkward statement. I'm unable to understand that why this statement was given. Maybe a pressure tactic, but unfortunately, I won't see any technological basis on which this statement was made. John Foyner should look at the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that it was India that diverted that some of the space technologies to develop its ICBM. One particular example is that India's PDV, Prithvi Defense Vehicle MK2, that interceptor. Some of the booster was used as from the booster of this PDV MK2 was developed from the ballistic missile technology, and the interceptor and the kinetical vehicle was mounted on that booster, and then it was launched. Same goes with the ICBM. Some of the ICBM are Indian ICBM are two-stage and three-stage, and their booster are derived from the SLV program. And how India has got SLV program, they need to understand. India got SLV program from cryogenic engine diverted from Ukraine after the end of the Cold War. And interesting part is that it was John Biden during when he was senator from Delaware. I think, if I'm not wrong, he was senator from the Delaware, cryogenic engine from Russia, and Biden moved a I think moves move a made a statement during the Senate committee that India should be penalized because they are exporting illegal cryogenic engines. But the same Biden, when came into presidency, his advisor made another story and accused Pakistan of diverting its ICBM technologies, diverting its technology to develop ICBMs. But it was the other side. Biden may have forgot that during 1994, he was there as a senator to accuse India of putting the world into danger because they are transforming technology from Russia. And unfortunately, after John Feiner's statement, India was given another chance by the Biden administration before leaving the Oval Office. They introduced some of the amendments in their basic laws within the domestic framework to amend the MTCR guidelines, just to give some of the credence to the Indian technology and give them the major parts to develop SLV program. So if we dig some of the history from Indian space program, you will find that Indian space program got many help from Russia, Germany, West Germany, France, and United States. And if you go into chapter number 5 of this book, the first line was that Indian scientists were not able to calculate the diameter of the propellant where the exhaust foam exists of the SLV. They were not able to calculate the diameter of the propellant accurately, and it was the American scientists sent by then U.S. administration to help them to calculate the basic science of the propellant. In 1970, it was a classified document which I accessed during my research at the United States National Security Archive documents, and you will find out that it was Indian scientists were so naive about the space technologies, and many of the help they got from the American scientists just to execute some of the basic calculation. What we have understand from the other side of the history that it was Pakistan that its program got lifted in 1962 with the help of American NASA administration in 1962 when the Rubber One was launched. And but unfortunately, I would say that it was the geopolitics and the denial of technology that wasn't in favor of Pakistan. And actually, we were unable to capitalize on the condition offered to us during 1960 onward. You can see from the history that Pakistan wasn't in the good books of America and the Western. That is why the space technology wasn't able to be landed in Pakistan. So Pakistan, India is a classic case where space technology diverted to develop ICBM, and you will see Surya missile, its expected range is 12,000 to 16,000 kilometers. And during my entire search, during my entire research from starting from 2010 to 15, I wasn't able to see any Indian telling me that they are developing Agni 6. They were denying. But after the Mai incident, they are now accepting that Agni 6 is in development and Surya is coming. So these two ICBMs, mm, they have ranges exceeding 10,000 kilometers, and Pakistan is only 4,000 kilometers away. You can say
which is double the range of a normal ICBM, like
yes, a double a
5,500,
range.
11,000. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So my point of view is that from home they are developing these ICBMs. The friends of today may be enemy of tomorrow. Friend of today can become enemy tomorrow, and that is why their capital need to be marked. That is a basic historical and mythological understanding in India, and they cannot discount that these Western capital will be not their enemy in coming future. That is perhaps the reason that space is playing a crucial part in making their target list beyond Pakistan. Western capitals are their own target list. And up to my surprise, even the national interest a credible American journal. They are publishing. Even Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is making a very balanced opinion sometime, and they are now tagging that they are now citing that Agni 6 is in development and its range will exceed 10,000 kilometers. So my question, it is also answered in my book that for what purpose they are developing. It is prestige factor, it is security perspective, and what role the space has played in the development of these ICBM. It is clearly written, and the world should recognize that Pakistan is not a threat. It is the Indian threat that is credible and that is suitable. Pakistan threat may be discounted, but Pakistan is not exceeding their missile ranges. And mark my word, or whatever the people, they have some. I can say that you can see the number of tests India is conducting and the number of tests is Pakistan has conducted so far. And in my book, up to 2022, the ratio was 2:3:1. Pakistan test ratio is very less, and India's test ratio is very high. And their ranges has been exceeded. So the delicate balance of power and the notion of deterrence is being challenged by the space capabilities and the missile capabilities. But there is a stark reminder for the Western capital that these technologies can be used against them in coming days.
Thank you so much for a very comprehensive answer. I am reminded of whatever you said, reminded me of an article that came out in Arms Control today, entitled US Space Aid to India on a Glide Path to ICBM Trouble. And it was written by Richard Spear. And he specifically talks about the 1994 report on the Surya missile, on the Surya ICBM. Yeah. So I think yes, no capability. If you have the capability, intentions could change, and this is what all of us who have been brought up and trained on IR theory and notions of, and various strands of strategic studies understand. You know your capabilities. If you have capabilities, the intentions um could change, and I also believe that this names have a lot. Language really matters. So the ASAT test was known as Mission Shakti, and as you rightly point out in your book, that India's response to China's ASAT test was delayed not because of its inability to produce an ICBM, but because of political reluctance. I think that's a very important point, and uh, we have seen in all aspects that reluctance has been done away with, and now restraint, if ever there was anything like that, is a thing of the past. And it's visible on the ground, it's visible on the battlefield, it's visible in the air, and it's visible in space. And there is an inexorable connection between all these things. um, so my plain and simple question, based off of this, would be, these things require resources. Pakistan's economy is not in a position to do everything. Resources are finite, and we have problems. So what should Pakistan do? Pakistan is an aspiring space power, but obviously it cannot turn a blind eye toward what India is doing. And given the centrality of space, um, for even nuclear deterrence, Pakistan can ill afford to let this gap widen. So what should Pakistan do, given its resources? Yes.
Thank you for asking this question. Pakistan is actually an aspiring space power as as per my understanding.
Yes.
And there are emerging space power, there are aspiring space power, and there are space powers. And some of my some part of my book has explicitly distinguished between these terminologies. Pakistan is an aspiring space power because of its modest space assets, and Pakistan is now an emerging space power after some time once its modest space program will be will be expanded. The capabilities actually determine the modesty, and the modesty leads to your actual power in whatever field you are aspiring for. If you are aspiring for land power, then you have to build some certain land power, military land power, as well as some financial resources, whatever you want to be part of the equation. So in space, Pakistan right now has PRSS-1, Pakistan Space, Pakistan Remote Sensing Satellite 1, Pakistan PAKSAT-1 Alpha, then uh, remote sensing satellite launched in on October 31st this year. Another satellite was launched in maybe around March or March. There are four, and now five. Fifth satellite was launched recently, hyperspectral satellite one. Fifth satellites, and one satellite is already there. This which is Paksat 1R, and another is Paksat 1, Paksat 1, Paksat 1, Paksat MM1. So Pakistan has communication satellites, navigation, communication satellite, as well as remote sensing satellite. Pakistan does not have any space weapon as per IHS Janes. Pakistan space program has no has in, has no indication of developing space weapons. And Pakistan's space program is purely based on achieving social economic development. Pakistan is although a nuclear power, but Pakistan nuclear deterrence is purely India-centric, and it has adequate capabilities to respond to Indian aggression anytime, anywhere, and any and the a point of its own choosing, and its missile cover most part of Indian land mass, including Nicobar, Andaman Island, as per the statements of for advisor NCA General Kidwai. So Pakistan space program is purely based on socio-economic development, and Pakistan has authored and released its space policy. It is clearly mentioned in space policy that Pakistan do not endorse any militarization, any sort, any aspect, or any manifestation, physical or anything related to space weaponization. Pakistan is not. Pakistan has actively advocate on UN Committee on Peaceful Use of Outer Space in Vienna and its two subcommittees that Pakistan do not endorse space weaponization and its physical manifestation in any form, not even in any stockpiling or development of anti-satellite missile. This is clearly mentioned in its Pakistan Space Policy 2000, published in 2023. And Pakistan has actually recently also developed a regulatory board, Pakistan Space Activity Rules Board, and it is actively monitoring space activities in Pakistan, which was which was not the case before 2023. So Pakistan activities are clearly under the garb of space, peaceful use of space. Pakistan actually believe on peaceful exploration and uses of space for the benefit of humanity. And this is not for sake of saying as I am a Pakistani, but I have actually witnessed it. Sometimes there is a need to say on the faces of other, because the people always create objections and doubts in the mind of people that he's saying because he's a Pakistani, but it is not the case. It is actually a reality. And but we can say that in case of India, it is actively developing space weapon. And this is not because I'm a Pakistani and I'm saying on the faces of the masses, but it is happening. It is I'm saying from as a space lover that these weapon will not help you. These weapon will actually give you and the second chapter, the theoretical framework in my book, it clearly suggests that space weapon will be there, it will be deployed, but will not be used. And yes, you can say something.
Yes, I think what you said at the end is quite gives me a lot of reasons to ask you about arms control and deterrence, but I think that requires another podcast. I think more discussions need to happen or take place on this idea of space deterrence and space arms control because um, obviously the dynamics of the space domain and the contours and dynamics of the space domain are not as similar to what we have down here. So I believe raised some excellent points at the end, which um, help us conceptualize that it's important for us, for everyone to let space be a global commons instead of militarizing and weaponizing it uh, to the point that it becomes a danger rather than providing any tactical or strategic advantages. Because I believe when states are not talking to each other, and if through activities in space, if they have more information about each other, then given the temptation to use coercion as an instrument of policy, I think we we can't leverage the peaceful applications of space. And as you said, you're a space lover. I think this should worry each one of us, including you.
Yes, Ali, basically, my understanding is that space weapon will be developed, and the major space power they want to conquer all the orbits starting from Earth till the moon, and they want to create dominance in all the orbits. But this remind me of the famous term that you are sitting or living in a house of dynamite. These are dynamites, and you can't ignite this dynamite because this will take the whole world down. Any single EMP attack in low Earth orbit that will take down all the value system on the terrestrial land because you are dependent on space technologies. These space assets providing you 24/7 communication, navigation services, and once these services are down, then you will be in a living dead situation. It is more lethal than a nuclear weapon detonated on the terrestrial on the land. It is more lethal than any other thing. Your all dependence is on space, and nobody wants that these space assets go, and space assets are taken down by some fanatic or some I think inadvertent action by some of the adversaries. This is not favorable, and the global common is likely to be weapon free. But I think the weapon will be stay in the global common, but they will not be utilized because a single piece of paint can take down a multi-million satellites once it hit with the speed of a traveling bullet or a speed of 1,000 kilometers per second. It will take down a multi-million satellites. It will severely damage or disrupt its function, and nobody wants to take that risk, because these satellites are not like you can easily replace them with a blink of an eye. It required a considerable time of action. Once you want to launch the satellite, it required a abundant of time to rethink and manage the plan of launching a SLV from particular site. You have to inform many stakeholders, and you require impeccable time, and you required many things, as far as the aviation and other things. Just you have recently witnessed that some of the major incident was averted in United States once SpaceX launch vehicle was launched in space, and it was destroyed, and its debris was about to hit some of the flights inbound. So this is not an ordinary thing. Once a satellite is taken down, you require a certain amount of time. And I have mentioned in my book that US is developing a redundant technology to replace a satellite within few days. That is the redundancy they want to create. But as far as space deterrence is concerned, there is no effective deterrence in space, because you want to deter your enemy not to commit any course of aggression in space, but it has happened. For example, US Iridium satellite was blinded by a Chinese laser in 2007. And look what happened. The American did not accept that their satellite was blinded, because it gives credibility to the Chinese capability that they are actually have blinded a US military satellite. How can they accept that? And it will credence and credibility to Chinese capability, and they did not accept that. And because once you give credibility to the capability of other side, you are accepting your defeat. So did not accept that it was a anti-satellite attack on US satellite. And same goes for many things. Nobody is ready to accept that the other has the equal capability to destroy your satellites. So once you don't accept a capability that your satellites or your space asset will be destroyed, then there is no deterrence, because deterrence based on three C's: capability, credibility, and communication. If you do not accept the credibility of your adversary, the credibility of the capability and the communication of your adversary, then you cannot develop a deterrence against an adversary. So that is a classic case I'm referring to. And the same goes and I want to add another point, that if the space asset or space weapon are deployed in space, and the chances of debris hitting your own satellites, then it creates self-deterrence, that you don't want to go into that length and destroy your own satellite, and your all dependence will be gone. So that self-deterrence is not letting you to deploy asset in space, neither on Earth. And another point, what if there is a famous term, responsibility. Can you tell me right now, nowadays, this way this terminology is linked with, and who is promoting that terminology? Can you say something like this? This responsibility is linked with nuclear, but I can suggest that this responsibility was first conceived in space. Once in 1971, you can see that in the history, the ABM system were deployed. These ABM systems were also anti-satellite weapons. So once that anti-satellite weapon or ABM system was deployed on US base in 1971, the US considered that it give also incentive to it will incentivize Russia to do the same and deploy the same on their bases. So they taken back and
That's
divert
why we
and
had the ABM treaty. under short
That's why
one,
we have the ABM Treaty in 1971,
72. Yeah.
and the system was not, dismantled. And the American consider that it is the responsibility we have taken that we should not go to fight a war in space. And later on, the ABM Treaty was scrapped in 2001.
Yep.
But that was the tip point. The responsibility was witnessed in space first, not in nuclear.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed, for touching upon virtually all aspects of the space domain, which I believe are central to um, citizens, not only policymakers and academicians, but citizens, but also citizens. I think, as you rightly talked about the dependency, I think space is a strategic domain and space has to be protected, not militarized and weaponized. So I thank you once again, and I look forward to having more discussions with you on related themes because unfortunately, we are in living in environments will which encourage the use of force as a very important component of policy. So, on this rather somber note, I thank you once again, and I look forward to seeing my audiences next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye.